Tens of thousands of Australians turn to IVF every year in the hope of having their own miracle baby.
Oh, I've wanted to be a mother my whole life.
The lucrative industry behind baby making can make those dreams come true.
1 in 18 births is an IVF birth.
But when things go wrong,
More bad news.
there's not enough transparency and accountability.
It takes forever to get back to the bloody starting line.
These are the stories, the errors, and unbelievable bungles that Australia's biggest fertility companies aren't owning up to.
How could they have used the wrong sperm to make children?
How many half-siblings do you think you might have?
So there could be potentially 700 siblings.
Our children's conditions were not severe enough to stop the sperm from sale. It's just money. That's all it is.
Hello, how are you?
Now, patients are coming together and fighting back.
I think they've messed with the wrong women.
People need to know that when things go wrong, this is how they treat people. This is the company you're getting into bed with.
In a farming shed in far northern New South Wales, two mums work into the night.
So, oh yeah, those people are twins. They're the ones that I've messaged, I haven't heard back from.
This is the nerve centre of their 2-year investigation into one of Australia's biggest fertility clinics.
We are like detectives because we're trying to find out the truth. Nobody's just offering up the truth to us, so we've gone looking for it. Sometimes we just sit there and do that for hours. One of us will be on one website, one of us will be on another, and then together we put together the information.
Anastasia and Lexi Gunn are the mums of 3 boys conceived through donor sperm.
Just click on that, we'll see if it matches the information that we've got about the donor.
Most evenings, they spend hours searching for clues into what went wrong with the conception of their children.
We love our boys so deeply, and what we want to do is get to the bottom of what's happened.
How do you personally describe what has happened to your family?
We had IVF and got the wrong sperm.
The couple's oldest son was conceived in 2006 at the state's largest IVF clinic, the Queensland Fertility Group. Anastasia says she took great care in choosing the right sperm donor.
Went to QFG and they had a big book with the donor profile. So at the top of every profile, it had the donor number, but there was definitely no photos and no names. There's an age bracket for the donor, the educational background, and the health history as well.
And what donor number did you choose for your first son?
I chose donor number 227. From day one, he was a big strapping boy.
4 years later, Anastasia and Lexi wanted to have more children.
We contacted QFG to check that we could use the same donor. And they said, yes, you can. So at every point we were very clear in the documentation and every conversation we had with them that we wanted donor 227 to be the donor that we used.
Their youngest sons were born 2 years apart. As they grew up, both boys have had serious health issues.
Our middle child is diagnosed with hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. As time went on, the diagnoses kept adding up. Our youngest son is less affected. He has joint hypermobility syndrome also. He also has a diagnosis on the autism spectrum and ADHD.
The two little boys have medical issues that the older boy hasn't got.
The couple wanted to find out if other children of donor 227 had similar diagnoses. So they sent the boys' DNA to an ancestry website to track down other families. The results floored them.
I found it profoundly confusing. I could see that there was no match between our eldest boy and our younger two.
She just rang me and was like hysterical and was so upset, and she just kept saying, they gave us the wrong sperm, the boys don't match. And I was just, I don't know. I just couldn't believe it.
Has QFG provided any explanation at this point as to how this could have happened?
None whatsoever. At first, they relied on denial that ancestry or any other home DNA testing could be accurate. We then attended legally binding DNA testing that they use for legal paternity testing in Brisbane and tested all three of our sons. And that showed definitively that our eldest son does not share any DNA with our younger children. We provided that evidence to them in January 2023. They have reiterated that according to their documents, they used donor 227 for our IVF, and that donor 227 is the biological father of our children.
So in the face of scientific evidence, QFG is just absolutely denying this has happened.
Yes, they have completely denied that this has happened. They have offered no rationale.
So how did you discover then who the real donor was?
Well, that was hundreds and hundreds of hours of work. So this is a culmination of putting together a lot of different sources.
Their research has led them to another QFG donor. DNA testing shows the two younger boys match with children from donor 222.
So we discovered that donor 222 and donor 227 came in on the same day and delivered their specimens on the same day. And so it could have been swapped on that day.
Is it baffling to you that QFG to date has accepted no responsibility for what's happened?
Blows my mind. Hurts my heart.
Do you think they owe you that?
They owe my children that and me that. My children are people, not products. Like, we're not talking about a pair of sneakers. Like, I didn't go home and open up the box and they were the wrong brand of sneakers. These are my children.
QFG is owned by Australia's largest IVF provider, Virtus Health, which has clinics all around the country. In what's become a fiercely competitive and profitable industry, Virtus is the market leader. The fertility company was at the centre of a heated takeover battle in 2022, won by private equity giant BGH Capital.
Well, private equity is all about money. And these are smart financial people. They wouldn't have bought into these clinics unless they thought they were going to make profit out of it.
What is driving that huge growth and interest?
We are providing a part of healthcare that people want. In Australia now, 1 in 18 births is an IVF birth. The fact is, it's in great demand. And if you are working in a business where the demand is huge, where the number of customers you have is huge, inevitably almost, you will make money if you can provide something that's a decent value.
3 big players account for more than 80% of the industry's total revenue: Virtus Health, Monash IVF and Genea.
I think it's good there are at least 3. The advantage, if you like the concept of capitalism, they do compete, and competition can improve quality and push down costs and so forth. So that's a good thing. The downside, I guess, is that sometimes the corporates can be a little cold and a little distant, and patients and people around patients get the sense that they're a number in a machine rather than a human being. And that's something it's all of our jobs to try and prevent.
Professor Bill Ledger is a fertility specialist with 30 years' experience in public and private IVF clinics. He's adamant, when things go wrong, patient care must come first.
We all must accept that occasionally error will happen. Each has to be dealt with very thoroughly, analysed deeply, change made to prevent it happening again. But if you have a clinic or clinics where mistakes keep happening, then there has to be a significant inquiry, and that should be external, and it should be visible and 100% transparent, but then probably change has to be made.
Not too bad. Definitely not as bad as I thought it would be. Well, that's good.
Sisters Sophie and Amelia Hawkshaw and their husbands Josh and Zach are private people.
Do you have any chopping you want me to do? Yeah, sure. You're going to use a spoon?
But they feel compelled to speak publicly for the first time about their experience with one of the big 3 fertility clinics, Genea.
But I think people need to know that when things go wrong, this is what Genea does. This is how they treat people. This is the company you're getting into bed with. It was, just the 2 of us growing up with my parents, and we're only 2 years apart. You just have your own little world of play together as kids.
Ready, set, go!
Yeah, it's always kind of been the 2 amigos of Amelia and I.
The sisters found out when they were teenagers that Amelia couldn't produce eggs.
And it meant that if I wanted to have a family, but I would need donor eggs from someone else.
That I kind of flippantly said, oh, I'll just give you some of my eggs. I'll just donate eggs.
What is it?
More than a decade on from that promise,
What's Mills cutting? Should we have a look?
Sophie had her first baby.
Ready? You can sit next to Mills here.
It meant she was then ready to start the process of donating her eggs to Amelia. The sisters went to a public fertility unit at Sydney's Royal Prince Alfred Hospital. The low-cost clinic is state government funded and run in collaboration with fertility giant Genea.
So all of the patient care is done by RPA staff, and all of the lab work is done by Genea, who are a private company that have a contract with New South Wales Health.
Sophie's retrieval procedure last August produced 22 eggs.
When did you find out how many embryos you had?
So the next day is considered day 1, and we found out that we had 17 embryos that had been fertilised, and that was just so exciting. It was such good news. I felt like my job was done.
Normally, we would get our next update on day 3, so we didn't get that far. So we got our call on day 2 to say that the embryos had been contaminated with the bacteria, and so it was those 17 that had to be destroyed. Just all of them.
What did those 17 embryos represent to you?
There's 17 embryos. I mean, they were all like potential children that we could have had.
A Sydney hospital has been forced to destroy embryos belonging to IVF patients.
Within days, their personal tragedy was thrust into the public spotlight.
And it felt almost like a betrayal because it was our story that I just wanted to scream, like, that's us that you're talking about.
Privately, the sisters were struggling to find out what exactly had gone wrong.
The doctor all said at the time that because it was something that had happened in the lab, it was an issue for Genea rather than the public hospital. They said that I would be called by Genea to organise next steps.
Genea told them an investigation was underway and that 2 other families had also had their embryos destroyed.
Okay, here we go again. Ready to make a baby. Just make sure it's ready. This is hopefully the last one, last round. Ah! Come on, baby, making.
Good and bad emotions, I look at that. So I remember being excited, but at the same time very hesitant.
Vicky Muller had her egg retrieval in the same week as Sophie. She got 2 eggs, which turned into 2 healthy embryos. But during the procedure, a blood vessel was pierced and Vicky suffered an internal bleed.
Yeah, it wasn't a very good night. Probably the worst pain I've ever been in my life, to be honest.
In so many of those photos, though, you're smiling and holding up 2 fingers.
Oh, do you know what? Because it was the best result I've got. I mean, this is the best result we've got in 5 years. Like, I was in so much pain, but I felt so strong. I still felt really optimistic, and I was proud of myself. You know, I was proud of myself. I got 100%, you know.
It was Vicky's 4th round of IVF.
Hello. Welcome home.
She and her partner Chris were forced to delay trying for a baby after he was diagnosed with prostate cancer a few years ago.
Lots and nothing.
I want to see my partner happy, and that's part of why this journey's been so difficult.
The couple was told about Genea's lab contamination when Vicky was recovering in hospital. Their precious 2 embryos had to be destroyed.
What did those 2 healthy embryos represent to you?
They're like gold to us. Yeah.
When it dawned, you know, in the hospital there, it just became a source of anger, you know, frustration, sadness, heartbreak. It's all milling around, you know.
Genea told them bacteria in the embryology solution was believed to be the likely cause. Vicky and Chris pressed Genea for more information.
It was like as soon as we got discharged from hospital, we were non-existent. They basically made me feel like a bad person for wanting to have a baby.
You know, when I asked for what really happened, and there was just a bit of this, the media was infected, and well, I already know that. How on earth does a company like you supply such an important service for an IVF process and dealing with people's lives and families? How on earth does that get infected? Just delve a little bit more into that to me, please. You know, was someone not wearing gloves, handling it like PPE? And then what happened?
But also, like, we're entitled to understanding what's gone wrong here, right? We're allowed to have an answer.
Sophie and Amelia and their husbands Josh and Zach have also been demanding answers on how such a critical error could occur.
It's our information. That's right.
Yeah.
That's what we went through.
Early on, Genea indicated there was a staff member with dermatitis on their hands working that day, but it wouldn't share the full details.
It's clear that human error was involved in the incident. And human error does happen. But for us, what's really caused the trauma and kind of affected us long term has been how we've been treated since the incident occurred.
How difficult has it been to extract information from Genea about what went wrong?
Impossible. Absolutely impossible.
Genea has refused to give the families a copy of its investigation known as the root cause analysis. The fertility giant told them it won't hand over the report due to the presence of sensitive private patient data and confidential commercial information.
How did you feel reading that as the reason why you couldn't know what happened?
Oh, that's absolute rubbish. That's just protecting themselves. That's going into damage control. Give me some information and some answers. I really, regardless of if you're private or public, it's my body, it's our embryos that you destroyed or didn't look after. How difficult is it to be honest and open to someone? I don't understand.
Vicky and Chris have teamed up with the other couples to hold Genea to account.
The Honourable Jackie Munro.
They've enlisted the help of a state MP.
We know that this has occurred for some women and that they deserve to know exactly what happened to the embryos they thought would develop into families.
They're hoping political pressure will force Genea and New South Wales Health to be transparent about what went wrong.
We are fighting so hard to get that root cause analysis. So Jackie Munro, who's an MLP in the upper house, she did a motion for the documents relating to our case to be publicly released.
I can only assume that this is a profoundly personal and devastating experience. Thank you. Minister.
It's taken going to Parliament to get access to our own medical information.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely ridiculous that this is how far we've had to take it.
Private equity-owned companies like Genea and Virtus Health benefit hugely from Australia's generous Medicare system. An IVF cycle at one of these big clinics can cost between $10,000 to $12,000. About half of that cost is covered by taxpayers.
The truth is that the shareholders benefit from the Medicare payments as well. I think it would be expected that there would be transparency.
Fertility researcher Karen Hammerberg has 20 years clinical experience in IVF. She says corporate clinics should be held to account when things go wrong.
If there has been, and it's established that there has been a mistake, transparency, I think, is always the best way to manage it. And obviously acknowledging that something bad has happened and what can be done in the future to avoid that it happens again.
There is a national regulator, the Reproductive Technology Accreditation Committee, but it isn't independent. It's run by industry peak body, the Fertility Society. RTAC's primary role is to audit clinics through a code of practice and grant licences, which allows them to claim Medicare rebates.
Is it even more important then that these corporate clinics that are receiving taxpayer dollars are being accountable and transparent?
Yes, it is. To my mind, it's quite unique that taxpayer money is transferring pretty much directly into private equity companies via a healthcare provision. It's a system that has evolved. It's changed organically over the years. Maybe it's time for a major review just to make sure that it's all functioning as it should.
I thought it was pretty cool that I was made in a petri dish and in a lab, and I was frozen for possibly 7 years. Like, that sounds like sci-fi.
I didn't have any interest in finding out who the donor was. I assumed he'd be a nice, generous, healthy bloke, because that's what they advertise. That's what they tell you they use. That's what everyone believes. That's what you would think is legislated, that is used. You don't think there's any lies.
Catherine Dawson has discovered she's at the centre of an unbelievable bungle involving two of Australia's biggest fertility companies. DNA testing has revealed poor vetting practices allowed her donor father to donate sperm under multiple different names with alarming consequences.
How many names did he tell you that he donated under?
I think that there were 7, including his own.
So how many half-siblings do you think you might have?
So at this stage, I think and I estimate that there could be up to 700 siblings. And it's still inside Victoria. This doesn't cover...
It sounds far-fetched, but Catherine says the evidence continues to stack up.
He pretty much said to me when I met him, he said all of the fake names that he used and that he went to 6 clinics and 4 hospitals. So I might not have wanted to believe him, and there might be reason not to believe him, but I've already found siblings across 3 different codes.
Those 3 codes are from Melbourne IVF, which is owned by Virtus Health, and the ASX-listed Monash IVF. So far, Catherine says sibling lists and DNA results have delivered matches for 56 half-siblings.
It's totally possible that your mate's sister could be my sister. Thanks to clinics not checking or verifying identification.
She's using social media to track down as many half-siblings as she can.
What's like the threshold for you to think something's not quite right?
It's not just the daunting number of half-siblings that worries Catherine.
How about we just let each other know who we are so that we don't date or have kids together?
There's an urgency to her search.
I have medical information for my siblings I really need them to have that could save their life.
As Catherine's connected with more and more half-siblings, she's learned of a bowel cancer risk. She says the donor also has schizophrenia.
Why do you feel a responsibility to find and contact each of those potentially 700 siblings?
I can't live with myself if I don't try to get that information to them.
But why is it your job to get that information to them?
It's not my job, but the clinics won't do it. The clinics have had 7 years.
Melbourne IVF has told Four Corners it wrote to recipient families in 2019, and 64% of them received the letter. But the clinic didn't say what health information it had passed on.
The clinics will only send a letter to my siblings' parents, the person who had the treatment, to an address that's potentially 20 to 40 years old.
Is it fair enough, though, to say that the clinics have made some effort to contact your siblings?
I think making an effort is very different to what they can do. They can use Vanish, which is a service to find their updated addresses. They absolutely know they can use Vanish.
Monash IVF told Four Corners it treats any new health concerns raised by its donor-conceived people seriously and sensitively, and that it must comply with its legislative obligations.
If someone had information for you that could save your life, how would you feel knowing that the clinics that created you and market you as a special gift, a miracle, and they're blocking you from having it? They're worried about the dividends that go to shareholders, not the human products that are on the other end of the treatments.
Catherine has complained to the industry-funded regulator RTAC that both clinics are withholding vital health information by not doing more to directly contact her half-siblings. She's begged RTAC to act.
What did RTAC say in that response to your complaint?
In response to my formal complaint, they've said that all they can really do is strongly encourage the clinics to act. There's millions going into making these babies, but nothing going into protecting them.
Are you surprised that the regulator can't do more in these individual cases?
Keep in mind that these cases are rare, and RTAC has not been set up to deeply investigate and regulate individual practice. That's not its role. It does a good job, but its job is limited by the rules it works under. And so perhaps there's a need for a system that is novel to regulate that part of the industry.
Lexi and Anastasia Gunn have also complained to the regulator, but RTAC doesn't investigate matters it considers historical because they predate its current code of practice. The couple is now suing their IVF clinic, the Queensland Fertility Group.
So Anastasia, you're a family of 5 living in a farming shed now. Was that the plan?
No, not at all. We'd saved up money to do our house extensions and framed out the kids' bedrooms. And now we have to use all our life savings, basically, to fight QFG in court.
QFG told Four Corners it's keen to work with the family to find a mutually acceptable resolution, but it wouldn't comment on the details of the legal claim while it's before the court.
They were hoping we would just goats in the too hard basket and run away, or run out of money.
And instead?
Instead, I would sell my kidneys to fight this.
Oh, I think it's a very dangerous thing to underestimate all mothers, but particularly mothers of children with disabilities. I think they've messed with the wrong women.
Four Corners is aware of another allegation that QFG used the wrong sperm to conceive children. Queensland's Office of the Health Ombudsman is investigating both complaints as well as systemic issues across the state's entire fertility industry.
In the end, if mistakes have been made, they will be unearthed at some point. And bad publicity, no one wants bad publicity. So denial, I guess, is perhaps one way of trying to avoid a problem. But in the end, it'll probably come back and bite you anyway.
Single mum Danielle Pataniti is fighting her own battle against QFG.
When you have a clinic that continues to be deceitful and not tell full stories, that's what really, really annoys me.
She's on her way to meet 2 other women who she's discovered used the same sperm donor to start their families. Between them, they have 4 kids, all offspring of the same donor. The half-siblings have almost identical disabilities, including moderate to severe autism.
Has there been any admission from QFG that this is genetically linked to the donor potentially?
QFG deny everything. Even with 3 different mothers, the same donor, 4 children with allied health reports that pretty much read word for word, there's still no admission that it's anything to do with what they're selling.
Danielle first realised there was a potential issue with QFG's sperm donor when she connected online with single mum Nikita.
Hi. Hi, nice to finally meet you.
You too.
Come take a seat.
Thanks.
The women haven't met face to face before.
What has it been, like 3 years or something?
But they've been swapping medical information about their sons since 2021.
Have you heard from QFG? We actually did a comparison. So we actually wrote down my son's conditions, her son's conditions, and we were like, it's like looking in the mirror.
Yeah, so school's called this morning.
Concerned it was more than a coincidence, Danielle and Nikita asked QFG to share information about their son's matching health issues with other families.
We begged them at different points, phone calls, emails, just asking, can you please pass this information along, sharing how important early intervention is, sharing that, yes, we understand we haven't got a proven genetic link, but what's the harm in sharing this information?
Hi, how are you going? Good, how are you? You're taller than I thought you would be. I'm just standing on my tippy toes. Hello, how are you? Good, how are you? Good.
Then, late last year, they found Marie. Her daughter had recently been diagnosed with autism, and her 4-year-old son's diagnosis was pending.
When Marie told me about her children, I literally felt sick. I had goosebumps all over my arms. It just felt like for those 3 years that we had been fighting was sort of like just, yeah, she'd missed out on those years.
So during those years that you're advocating, pushing for QFG to tell other families, Marie was none the wiser.
Yeah, it was quite horrifying, to be honest.
And, you know, I wouldn't change my kids for the world. I love them and I'm so grateful. Went through a lot to have them. But I feel that all of the information that could have been shared has not been shared to me.
Is that frustrating?
Yeah, it's frustrating. It's really, I mean, our children all share half of the same DNA. They're all experiencing similar challenges. I don't think the duty of care ends when the baby is born.
Have you asked QFG why you weren't informed about the other 2 boys?
I have, yeah, and they've never specifically answered that question, so, yeah.
QFG has told Four Corners its geneticists advised them there was no clinical requirement to notify other families about the diagnoses of Danielle and Nikita's boys. It wasn't until months after Marie contacted the clinic about her children that QFG decided it would advise patients, but only about the autism diagnosis. But following further questions, QFG conceded to Four Corners that there is still one family it hasn't informed.
There is apparently someone that's pregnant, and there's 3 embryos that have been created sitting in a freezer ready to make another 3 families.
So there are still children now being born by using this donor?
Yes. After us fighting and pleading and carrying on for years and years on end, the semen has never been destroyed. It's continuing to be sold as probably gold-class Australian sperm. I just don't understand how they can create kids with something that there's a higher chance of it turning into disability. It's just money. It's all it is.
QFG says the donor sperm is still available for family extension. In other words, for patients who've already used the donor and want more children. Why wouldn't the clinic stop using a sperm donor in those circumstances?
I can't quite understand that. It would seem, unless it is proven that it's not linked to the sperm donor, I think you have to presume that it might be.
Starting in 10. Set yourself up. You can do your split stance or you can jog. All right, let's go.
10 months on from Genea destroying her 2 embryos, Vicky is trying her best to stay optimistic.
Okay, going into your hooks.
But time is precious. She's now with a new fertility clinic after turning down Genea's offer of a free cycle through the public system.
All right, have a rest, guys. Hello, Vicky speaking.
Today, Vicky is receiving the results of a blood test to see if she can go ahead with another IVF cycle.
Gosh. Okay, yeah, bye. Hey, Chris. Not starting.
Not starting?
No.
Not bad news.
God.
Hang in there.
It's just annoying.
Just one play after another, isn't it?
Oh, it takes forever to get back to the bloody starting line.
The trauma is still there, but yeah, we're hoping to be moving on with growing our family, which we're really excited about. Yeah, and can I share my good news?
Well, I would love you to share your good news.
Are you okay if I share this good? Okay, cool. We're really pleased that we are actually pregnant at the moment. So we're expecting in November, which is really huge for us.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Sophie and Josh are also expecting their second child at the end of the year.
Wonderful to have a nephew coming soon. I think what's important to me now is that patients are supported in the future if something like this were to ever happen again.
It's an important day for Sophie and Amelia.
This is a good day. It's an exciting day.
Yes.
They're meeting Vicky at New South Wales Parliament, hoping they'll finally gain access to Genea's investigation findings.
Oh, we're here way too long. How are you? Good.
They've all invested so much hope that the parliamentary process will force Genea's hand.
Shall we? Yes. Okay. Sure. I'm so excited.
Hello, it's so good to meet you. I'm Jackie.
Amelia, hi.
Amelia, lovely to meet you.
You too. Sophie.
Sophie, thank you so much for coming in. I really appreciate it.
But Liberal MP Jackie Munro doesn't deliver the news they're anticipating.
Essentially, the government has declined to provide further information from Genea. So at this stage, we've asked for the root cause analysis report, but the government haven't pressed Genea to actually release that information. It's so important that we get...
The women are told Genea has raised significant concerns with New South Wales Health about the public release of the root cause analysis.
The reason that it's so important that we have these documents, of course, is because when the public system partners with the private system, there must be accountability and transparency in that agreement and that arrangement. We know that the taxpayer...
They're no closer to finding out the truth.
Of course, what does this RCA have in it that they're trying so hard to prevent us from seeing?
For them, the lack of transparency is crushing.
So exhausting that 10 months later, we're still at this point. Okay. It's all right. I was straining. Take a breath. I know. Can we get some tissue? Yeah. It's exhausting and it's frustrating.
I want to keep going if we can. Yeah.
We're not going away. If it takes going to Parliament, if it takes going to court, we're not going away.